For everyone that hadn't heard initially, so Amy Belisle, I'm from Georgian Bay General. I have been at Georgian Bay for 29 years. My background is emergency nursing. I left my full-time position in Emerge and moved into informatics 14 years ago. So I'm very happy to be part of the CARE4 team, and I am co-leading with Elaine Hooper, and EDM has been one big focus for me. I'm very happy to have team members on with us today from our informatics group that have built the ED module with us. We've worked very hard, 4 sites coming together. Definitely, we've worked really hard with the build team, with our working groups from all 4 sites, and happy to say that we are, I would say, 100% standardized across all 4 sites for our Emerge department. It has been back and forth. We've had lots of give and take. We've had to give up a few things and, work with the sites and make things usable for all 4 sites to make it user-friendly for our staff and a great experience for our patients coming in. So joining me today, I have Whitney Leonard from registration. I'll let her introduce herself, and Heather McLeod, who is joining us as well from the informatics team. So Whitney, go ahead.
Hi, my name is Whitney. Hi, my name is Whitney Leonard. I'm part of the patient access team here for Expanse. My background is inside clerk in emergency medicine at RVH. I've been with RVH for 8.5 years, and I will be doing the registration portion of today.
Heather.
Hi, can you hear me?
Sure can.
Okay. Hi, I'm Heather McLeod-Soward. So I'm part of the PCS EDM EMV build team with CARE4, helping out with a lot of the EDM builds and the trackers. So I'm just Amy's backup today in case things go wrong and she needs some support. So hope you have a great day.
We also have Maria Ma joining us. I'm not sure if Maria wants to pop on and introduce herself. She's from the physicians team, and she will be our physician today for ED.
Hi, everyone. My name is Maria Ma. I'm part of the physician system team. I'm the team lead for the PAPD side of the house. I work at RVH. I've been at RVH for about 15 years now, 7 years at clinical informatics. I have computer programming as a background, and I will be helping out this morning for the physician side of the house for the ED portion.
All right, so for today, we're not emulating a nurse or having a nurse. So you're going to see my access for the build team, which of course is a lot of access. So as I go through this, you may see a little more on your screen, and I'll just kind of explain as we go through what you would see. So first login, you are going to notice that we are in test, so everything's green. You will, when we do go live, it'll go back to that nice light blue that you have now. So just your initial login, everyone will have the clinical. So we will first, you would click on your clinical, and then you would click on EDM tracker. For other access, or if you are in other modules, then you would have the CER module. If you were inpatient, you would have the PCS status board. But for this purpose today, for this first hour, we're in the EDM tracker. I am going to point out at the top, because with Go Live, we are going with the web layered in how you log in will be a little different from your icon that you log into currently. So as you currently log in, your trackers pop up on the bottom, and you click amongst your trackers there. And when you see this E, the return to at the top, this will be your navigation back and forth between different screens. As you open up, and I'll come back as I start opening up screens, but as I start opening up screens, I'm just going to ask for everyone to go on mute as well, because we're echoing. Thank you. So as I open up a screen and I open up a tracker, or I open up an assessment and different things, you'll see that each screen will start opening up. You will find could be annoying initially, but you will find it very beneficial to you as those screens open up, because you can come back and you click on your E at the top when you're on any screen, and you can click to the tracker or the screen that you would like to go on, and it quickly navigates you back. Okay, so we will pop into the EDM tracker. So to start with, now we keep saying trackers because they are trackers, but in Expanse, we have now what we call list. So lists are your trackers. So they display a little differently. So when you first log in, you will have your list of trackers. Now again, we are in test and we have all 4 sites showing on here because we are build team. If you were an RVH nurse, you would have your list of RVH trackers. We are not demonstrating today or having here your zone trackers or your area trackers for any of your sites, because some of the sites have areas and some have zones. So if you have a blue zone, red zone, that would be listed here as well, amongst your EDL trackers, your triage tracker, waiting room, etc. Everyone will have a My List tracker, and it will appear at the top. My List tracker will be that tracker when the nurse signs up for their patients, because yes, we all do need to sign up for all of our patients in Expanse. And that patient will go on your list. That is your tracker. And that patient will go on your list. That is your tracker. And got some echoing there again. Okay, thank you. So the My List, again, is that nurse's specific tracker, those patients signed to you. But again, you can flip between trackers, and you know, if you're covering somebody's break and you need to be on the blue zone and you want to see everyone that's in that area, or if you need to be on the EDL, then the EDL. We're trying to because moving into Expanse and everything going electronic, it does make our trackers very heavy and very busy. And, you know, longer to load for the busyness of it. So the ED All, we're really encouraging that that's a viewing tracker, not so much a doing tracker. So your My List and your zone trackers, those are your nurse specific trackers where we would like to see everyone doing their work, documentation, etc. Because we all know when we have 50, 60 patients on the ED All, it becomes very slow to load. So I will move over to the, and I am going to work out of the GB tracker today, only because I'm going to EC-TAS a patient, and that's the only EC-TAS I have access to. So quickly just go on to the GB All. You're going to see it's a busy tracker. Starting with the top, the header. Again, very similar to our headers, but what is nice in Expanse is all headers across all modules are the same. They're standardized. They're hard-coded from Meditech. We didn't really have any say as to where things went and displayed. So you'll notice that code status is in a different spot, but your code status, your weight, your allergies, you know, your patient name, the sex, what the age and sex, sorry, what area they are in, GB main being we're in the GB site, what room that that patient's in that's highlighted, and whether they have any allergies, account number, and then their MRN number. The little I at the top will be explained later, but again, I'll just click on it quickly, but it will show it's a view, it's not a do, and it quickly will, at a quick glance, you can see allergies, special indicators, which I'll speak to, height, weight, and location of that patient, and code status if there was a code status on that patient. So your headers for your trackers, we do have a first column now, that is the open chart column. When you're opening the chart, that is opening up to the assessments and to get into documentation. When we click on it, and I will do that in a few minutes, it opens up that patient's chart, or you can click on open chart over here as well, whatever you're comfortable with. I find a lot when I'm using a mouse, I do go to open chart over on the side panel. But this is standard and we cannot remove that. Then the next column, we have our EC-TAS. So again, coloring is a little different in Expanse. You'll notice that the red is not that vibrant red we have in Current, but we were able to pull out the same colors for your EC-TAS colors. for your C-test colors. And then we have room, age, sex, repeat visit. So those patients coming back, we'll just show a number here. Patient name, chief complaint, special indicators. Special indicators, we will discuss a little further on a demo tomorrow, but quickly where we, at all 4 sites right now, we do critical care indicators or we do VIPs. This is all now being encompassed in special indicators. So if we have a fall risk patient, we can identify that in special indicators. If they are a First Nations, Métis, or Inuit, if the patient has a hearing or a vision, or if they are our multi-visit patients to our emerge departments that have special care plans. We'll identify them in the special indicators. Then our next column is confidential. Confidential will be obviously those patients that want to be confidential and have requested, or we will be identifying our CNCC patients, or our incarcerated patients will be identified in special indicators, but as well will be flagged in the confidential. So you will see this Y down here with this pink color, reddish color, that will flag a patient so that we know that patient was either confidential or is an incarcerated patient. Our next column is our physicians, MRP and nurse. So you'll see with physicians, we have gone with last name. So it'll be a last name for a physician and first name for the nurse. Surveillance column, right now we have the new module that's been added into Expanse that we're very excited about. You'll see I have 2 patients here that have been flagged for COVID. So if I flag them at triage with any symptoms and they flag positive, they will come on our status boards. And if I click on it, you'll see that they were screened positive. Once that COVID test goes off to the lab and is resulted, that it will show another pop-up, and it'll be in red that will show that that patient is a true positive. The following column, uncollected. So again, these next few columns, the same as very currently what we have now for all our indicators. We will go into a little more detail on indicators, but I just want to show you this first column is uncollected. So if that physician orders a specimen of urine and you haven't got it yet, it will come in as uncollected until the nurse goes in and actually collects that specimen. The next column is attached with lab. So anytime we have an abnormal or a critical result, you will show that A or that C, which will show in red for the critical result. Then again, we have all our indicators, but I'm not going to spend time on that because our second patient, we will discuss indicators. TAR. So TAR is your transfusion administration record, which is brand new for RVH. We do have a TAR demonstration that will happen tomorrow. So we'll go into great detail on what TAR is like and what it looks like. For 3 sites, TAR is the same other than scanning. So scanning your patient and scanning your product will be new. Net new, obviously, for RVH, but we'll have a great demo for that tomorrow to be able to demonstrate that. The next column is precautions. What everyone knows now in current as isolation, we all call it ISO, but new terminology is precautions that we need to use. So if you have a patient that's on enhanced or that has been deemed at triage, that will show in that column. The next column is admit. So when we see this admit here in the column and it's highlighted pink, that is when our physician has done a complete admission, has all the orders ready for the nurse. And that will go into demonstration on that on our third patient today. BPMH, so the best possible medication history. This is where a nurse can request the pharmacy tech to come in and start that BPMH and get that ready for a med rec for that physician. That demo today is at 3:15, so we'll go into that more, but the nurse can request that at any time. The @ symbol here is your comment symbol. I will explain that I know a couple of the sites right now for your comment is text and you see that full comment. But one thing about the Expanse new trackers If you have a text and it gets quite long, your tracker then becomes a very long right scrolling tracker. It doesn't have a hard stop. So we were running out of space, and we decided to remove the text and go with the comment. But if you click on the comment, your text does show up.
I'm literally like just kind of got in and was sitting down in the roller coaster. Rita.
Sorry, you're not muted. I think it's Jessica. Thanks. So the next column is your length of stay time. So that is that full time from time of triage in the door right through till time of discharge. Right underneath it is your status. So any of the status events that are pre-populated that come in with different events throughout ED, or that is your status events that we just manually change, right? If the patient's going to DI or within the department. And then that second time is called the event time. So that's the status event time. So if I was to change that status event from with MD to MD reassess, that time resets, goes back to 0. So anytime a status event is changed, it goes back to 0. It's more of a, let's say, a tracking. A couple of the sites used it, and we debated whether it goes on for all. And it was kind of that last deciding factor on the status or on the trackers as to how we standardize, and this was one that we all just decided to go with. So if the physicians are a little longer seeing that patient, you can quickly see they've been up for reassessment for now 3 hours, and you can go talk to that physician and say, hey, like, you're going to come see that patient anytime soon. That'd be nice. So that is the EDL, and I'm going to pop over to the My List. So the My List tracker, a little different than what you just seen. It does have basically those first 5 columns are the same. And then we get into a little different because we no longer have a chart. Paper chart is gone. So how do we see those orders that the physician currently writes down? How do we acknowledge those orders? Where now when we just initial beside that order to say that, yeah, I know that I need to give that Tylenol. So now moving into the electronic world, we have a few changes. So this next column beside surveillance is acknowledge. So when I click into that cell, what happens is it pulls up the orders that that physician has written for me. I can click off one order, or if I can click off all orders, and I would click on the bottom acknowledge. So just think of it as holding that chart and initialing beside each of those orders. So that is what acknowledge is. And that from there, what that does is it adds your meds to your MAR, or it adds different orders to your work list, depending on what needs to be done. There could be a communication order that gets added, and that would basically, it could be something as simple as the physician saying, if temp goes above 38.5, give Tylenol. So these would be all the orders that the physician would be putting in electronically. I'll just go back. We won't acknowledge any of that yet. And then again, exact same columns for all our indicators, precautions, admit, BPMH, and that, your status events. So then I will just demonstrate what we have down here. So we're calling this the primary status board up top, and then this is the secondary status board that is on the nurses' trackers. Because this is your tracker that you need to see everything that you need to document to, and at a quick glance be able to see your last vitals documented. So these are my triage vitals that have been documented, and then as more vitals come through, then this updates. The communication below it would be, again, that communication order that I said that the physician would put through. And then intravenous. So new in Expanse is showing our being able to document our intravenous's. So if I've started intravenous on the patient, and I've documented that I've put in a 20 gauge and left arm, that's great, but that's just the site documentation. Now we actually have to go into the MAR. So we open up the MAR and we document on that normal saline, and we start that IV. So you can see my little gauge when I'll do one On the next session, if you're joining on the BMV, I will document to a normal saline bolus. So what happens? It would be blue to start with, and it says full. And as that bolus runs, the little gauge starts to move. And this one obviously finished 10 hours ago, as you can see here. So then it's gone to done now. So as you change up your IVs, you add IVs, they will add to this list. Anything within this secondary status board, if there's more documentation than 3 lines, you'll get an ellipses. It'll be what we see here in the meds. It'll be a dot dot. If you click on it, then you'll be able to go in and see what further documentation or meds have been administered or need to be given. So in TAR, so for this status board, TAR is going to show up down here. So if we had a unique product or a non-unique product of red cells that need to be infused, then that'll show up here. And like I said, we'll go through TAR later tomorrow. And then along with the indicators, the CT ultrasound prep that goes along with the indicators, Heather will demonstrate that in a few minutes when we get to our second patient. Okay, and then just on the side, you have all the, now again, I have a lot of buttons over here, but the nurses, clerks, whoever's working in Emerge, we will have this tailored as to what each person needs for their menu and what they need to have for access. The same with the status events. When I click on status events right now, I have the entire list, but each staff working will have a list that's pertinent to them that they need for working in that day. When I click into Open Chart, you will see that this is your work list. So in current state, you have to click on EMR to open EMR. Now when you open Chart, your EMR is right here. So at a quick glance, you can see anything that's red. We know we have results. We know we have things to do. You know that this top section is your viewing section. There's nothing here that you can document to. Your below the gray line is your doing section, and this is where you do all your documentation. You write your notes, you get to your meds, you document to your work list. So your work list in a quick glance here is all your documentation. So what we have done is we've gone through with all the build team and the working group, and we've built out standard of cares for ED and attached it to every chief complaint. So every chief complaint has a standard of care that's tailored to, for that for that chief complaint. We do have the option to add, so we can add at the bottom. And, if we wanted to add in a bladder scan, we could easily just add in a bladder scan and add that to our list and document to it. So the nurses will have full access to add any other documentation that they want if there's anything outside of what we have already standardized for that patient. Okay, quick overview. Took a little longer than I thought. I'm going to try and get through our 3 scenarios now. Our 3 scenarios today planned on first patient. I want to bring you through a patient coming in brand net new through triage. And bring them through. They're going to have a bladder infection, and we're going to write a script, and then we are going to send that patient home. Second patient is already on the tracker, and we're just going to do an explanation of the indicators. If we get time to get to that third patient, I hope we do, the admit, it will be a quick admit process and how we can get to that. Okay, let's go. So I'm on the ED triage tracker. Again, I'm on the GB site, and I'm going to receive my patient. So we go into reception, very similar to what we have now. Now, of course, I'm in test and I don't have health cards. So if I had a health card number, I would put pound and put in that health card number, or I would swipe that health card number. But because my patient's going to be net new for me today, I will just input them manually. So my patient's going to be demo ED. You can see with the asterisks what we are mandatory to put in. So age of 45, we're going to make this patient a female. This patient is coming in with a UTI. We do know as in current state that stated complaint is mandatory and we have to fill that in, or this patient will not flow over to ECTAS. I will put in the chief complaint just quickly here because I do want to show you medical directives. So medical directives, I'm not going to process this one today, but they are still being built and approved for ED. But what will be happening is the chief complaint will populate the medical directive, and I will just put in arrived by. And that is the only fields in here that we will be filling in reception. In the reception screen, we will not be documenting to the assessments. We won't be documenting to the allergies or special indicators. In Expanse, we have the reception and then we have a triage. So everything actually happens within the triage field. So we save this. Then this populates. So it's your pop-up for your medical directive. So you'll see it'll say the following complaint has an associated order set of a UTI. You may open the chart and start the order set, or you may come back to the order set later and start it. So you can open the chart. So I could open this chart right now and process that urinalysis on that patient. And if that patient I send them away with the sample and they bring it back later, then that's fine. We can still process it now and have those labels print when we collect that urine. Or we have this little pop-up over here that says, no thanks, maybe later. A little strange how they worded that, but I could say no thanks, maybe later. Then the next nurse or, your waiting room nurse or your inside nurse, primary nurse, could then access and process that medical directive at that time. So for the purposes of today, I'm going to say no thanks, maybe later. So now my patient is in the receive status. You see my chief complaints coming up. And then what we do from this point is we go into triage, where we are going to document that triage assessment, which is our FRI. If this was an EMS patient, we would fill out the EMS section. We do keep it collapsed just so it's not so busy looking. But in training, you will all see that you need to document to the EMS report. We do have false questions. Now, I will say that there's a few more questions going to be added in here that came out of our integrated testing last week. So there will be some changes still happening. You got to remember, we're still in test. But for right now, for today's purposes, we are going to say this patient has not had a fall. And then we move into our COVID screening. And this COVID screening is standardized throughout the hospital, inpatient registration, all clinics, etc. So we're going to just make our patient positive with a few symptoms today. And then you will see that that patient automatically screens COVID screen positive, which then is what populates onto our tracker, alerting everybody. Okay, and then we just go into our regular FRI. Is that patient short of breath? They haven't traveled outside of Canada. And then our GI, the vomiting, diarrhea. Do they have a history of C. diff? And then into our ARO questions. If they have anything, you can check that off. And then again into your precaution type. So if we're going to isolate that patient. The below ARO screening, it will not be done at triage, but if that patient is going to be admitted, then the nurses will be taught how to get that ARO screening completed, and that will move on to, if the patient's being admitted, into the full infection control screening. So we will save and exit here. Okay, so then we'll pop over to EC task. I will EC task this patient, but just showing everyone that EC task has not changed for any of our current nurses that are on the call. EC task looks identical. We still have the same fields to fill out. If we, we've pre-populated our stated complaint has come over, we've done our nurse, and then we can do our subjective and objective. And I'm going to keep this quick by just putting in a subjective temperature. I'll just say all these numbers. Just patients coming in with a UTI, so we're going to make them be pretty healthy. But if anyone's ever had one, they know it's very painful. You could document a Glasgow Coma scale here as well, if that was pertinent to the patient, cap refill. All these fields fill back to Meditech, and they all come back through our interface. I will put in a weight just so you can see that. The other thing that has come out of our integrated testing, and I will add it, I do have height and weight added to our standard of cares, but I do need to add it onto the triage assessment, so that will be added for next week. And then you can see my modifiers pre-filled, and we'll leave it at that. And then I'm done that triage. So of course we're in test, so that does take a couple seconds to come back. You know what EC TAS is like. Could be a little bit longer. So what I'm going to document too as that's coming back is my patient's allergies. Very similar to how you document allergies in Current. So your allergies, if you need to start typing in if this patient has a penicillin allergy, you would type in penicillin. You'll see that you cannot file. Anytime you see red in Meditech, that means we still have to document something. So you can click on the edit and you can pick whatever the reaction is that the patient tells you. Also, before I even started typing that in, the NK unattainable you could have clicked on as well if that was if that patient did not have any. Special indicators that I had spoke to, if you do a quick lookup, you can see that these are all special indicators. Now I currently have access to all. IPAC will only be the ones that have access to IPAC. We will not all have access to that. Different groups will have access to different special indicators. But for today, we can say maybe that patient has a hearing, just so we can show one. And then we won't be putting in any meds. So come back, we can see that our patient has come back from ECTAS. Our ECTAS code is here, and our chief complaint has come back as well. I had put that in previously, but I say I'd put in a cough, but when I went into ECTAS and I update it to a UTI, it would come back and override that and update our chief complaint. It's whatever we put in ECTAS and what comes back is what files back into Meditech for us. Okay, I will update this to triaged, and Whitney, it is all yours to register our patient. Brittany's not going to flip her screen just for the sake of saving screens, but she will register this patient for us. Just let us know when you're done, Whitney, and I'll refresh my screen. When Whitney is done registering her patient, that patient will leave our triage tracker and flow over to the waiting room tracker. I will show you registration on the registration tracker. This is where Whitney is right now, and she's working away, registering this patient. Once she is done, that status event will automatically change to waiting room and update into our waiting room tracker, where the nurse will go and bring that patient into the room. While I'm sitting here on the list trackers while we're waiting, you will see that the counts, and I didn't mention this, sorry, that the counts for all the beds within the department. So you can see at Headwaters, they have 20 beds, currently filled by 14 patients. So at a quick glance, anyone can go in and see, for Collingwood, they have 37 available beds, but only have 8 patients in that bed.
Amy, registration is complete.
Thank you. All right, so here's our waiting room tracker, and Whitney has finished that registration, so here is our patient. So I'm going to sign up I'm going to switch over to the primary nurse, and I'm now going to sign up for my patient and put that patient into a room. So I will pick a room. We're just going to bring that patient into our fast track room, and then we have the sign up feature over here, and because I'm logged into this computer and this is my Meditech session open, I click on sign up. That patient falls off that waiting room tracker, now falls onto my list. So we can see here that demo ED is now on my list, and this is my patient. physician is not signed up as yet. I am signed up. It goes to the to be seen tracker. The physician now will, have that patient on his or her list, and they will sign up for the patient and do their documentation. Maria, just one second, and I won't get you to go there quite yet. I will just open up the chart, and I will just show that, oh, sorry. And of course, you want to actually click on the patient you want to go to. So you will see with a UTI, they don't have a full head to toe assessment, but they have a general assessment. I'm not going to go in and do documentation because we're going to be limited on time, but you can say I would just do a general documentation on this patient. If I brought that patient in after 4 hours, or according to, if they had a fever, of course, we would go in and document their vital signs, and if there was any meds to go at the end, we would document to that. So Maria, if you could sign up for that patient now, that would be great. And then I'm going to get you, if you could write a script for that patient. Of course.
Do you need to see the screen? Would you like me to share the screen from the physician side, or just do it on the back end?
I think we could just do it in the background because.
Okay, sure. I can certainly do that right now.
Thank you. So you can see on the side, we have what we called ED summary. So in current state, I think, I might call it triage, or, and I'll just click on it just so you can see. So this is your ED summary from triage through. So patient had allergies, showed my special indicator, the reaction with that allergy, and then our triage and our EC-TAS assessments, that was documented on that patient. And then the vital signs, and then just showing that I documented to that. So we still have that. That has not gone away. So that's great. So quickly, I know the physicians use that a lot as well, but physicians can fully access all our documentation as well. So what Maria is doing in the background is she signed up for the patient. So you can see last name, Maria Ma has signed up. The status event has changed to with MD. So I will comment a little bit on the colors as well as for the status events. We've only actually colored 4, maybe 5 status events altogether. The colors are a lot different in Expanse. You notice that they're very pastel, and we worked and tried to figure out which ones did the nurse really need to have pop out. So we did the with MD, the nurse reassess, admit no bed, admitted patient. We did once Maria's done with the patient and has written the script, Maria will click on a ready for discharge, which you can see right here is ready for discharge. That will be grayed out for nursing because that is only a physician function. So once the physician is done with the patient, in that status event will alert the nurse to go ahead and complete the discharge and remove the patient from the tracker. So what I will do is I will go in and open up that chart, and I will go to the discharge plan. As Maria's writing her prescription, I'll refresh it once she's finished, but the prescription will show up in here. The nurse has the ED discharge assessment to document too. And I will open it up and give you the heads up as what it looks like. So for today's sake, I'm going to say patient discharged by MD, not by nurse. So, those fast track patients where the physicians are seeing them, giving them a script, and out the door they go. We did not see them leave. So we need to document something. So we document that the physician let that patient go, and whether they walked out by themselves or and then, if we didn't see them leave, we didn't have anything else to say, then there's nothing else to document on here. But if we did do instructions, if we had any follow-up appointments or any belongings, then we would document to that. I'll just save that. Once Maria's, like I said, done.
Amy, we're just trying to find with Adriana that med that you're asking me to put in, which is Bactrim. It's not in the system yet. Yeah, I have Septra, but it's not PO right now. It's IV is what we have. It's still being built. So
If you want to just stick anything on, Maria, just so we can
Stick
show them what
anything,
the script
okay?
looks like, that's fine.
All right, sounds good. Thanks.
No problem.
You want to change the antibiotic? Do you want to give another antibiotic?
Sure, it doesn't matter. Just for purpose of showing them the prescription today. So once that, so what the nurse will be responsible for doing is the discharge assessment and then saying the patient disposition. So did the patient go home with support? Did they just go private home, no support? That's worded a little differently from what we currently have in some of the dispositions, but private home with no support is what we would fill in. And then we would fill in the discharge date and time. When you fill in that discharge date and time and you save it, that removes the patient from your status boards and your trackers. And as in current as well, you can start this. So, you know, sometimes you know that they're leaving and they're almost done, but you don't want to do that discharge yet. You can do that. You can go back and start working and doing something else and then come back and actually take that patient out. And if you have to backdate the time, that you can still do that. Okay, so because we're quickly moving on, short on time, Heather, while that's happening on that patient, do you want to just start on the DI and talk about us, the indicators for us?
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
So we have a patient here that has already had their CT and ultrasound ordered, and at RVH they had a system kind of set up with their DI people that would allow DI to go in and actually, are you going to do the actions or do you want my screen up? Amy?
Heather, I can go through it or you can flip over. We got 5 minutes.
We might as well just carry on.
Okay.
With you.
Okay.
So that we can actually see that they need prep or that there's the DI department is ready for them. So we have put into the open chart and on the work list, there is a couple of interventions that can be added. And if you just type in DI, it's DI prep and DI send patient. So the DI people will add that and then chart on them. So if you document, it gives you, okay, here are the instructions. I want you to change into a gown, the patient's to be NPO. We need an urine result on whether they're pregnant or not, and we want them full. So they save that, and it then goes onto the tracker for the nurse, indicating that there's instructions. So this little whirligig on the prep is highlighted, indicating that now there's instructions. The order went over. They've given us instructions. We'd like you to change them into a gown, etc., etc. Then the nurse can go in and document on the same. You just need to refresh on the same one to say, now I've done those things. And the gown is on, they've got their IV, I've done all of the things that were required, and it lets the DI people know that the patient is ready. And they can say, now send that patient over. So it's just to try and save a few phone calls, which we are finding interrupts everybody's workflow. So this way, if you're just on your tracker and you're keeping an eye on things, you know you have a patient that's supposed to go for CT, there's less interference with phone calls being pulled here and there or the messages being relayed. Once the patient has been completed, you would actually change the status saying, yep, I sent them over to DI. And once they're done, then they would cancel those, and the tracker would show that they've been sort of grayed out. Yes, that's all finished, and we should be now expecting a result.
Okay, great. Thanks, Heather.
You're welcome.
Amy, my side has
Okay.
gone right now.
Thank you, Maria. So just the other thing to note with indicators, the color schemes that we've gone with. So when nursing or physicians, as I first put in those orders, we will see the labs or DIs or whatever, any of those indicators, they will come through as black. Once the lab or DI has picked them up and they're starting to work on them and they've in progress and they've been taken, they will flip to blue. Green, you will see as green is go, that everything has been completed and available for viewing for those patients. As well, when you see CT green, you know that that CT has been reported. And here is our, I've already looked at it, so my report was not read, but you will see that we have a signed report here for that patient. So that you can quickly see that as well once the physician a radiologist has read those reports. Okay, so let's quickly go back up to Maria's patient that she just finished, and we will go into the chart, into that discharge plan. I might have to get back out. Okay, so we can see the prescription that they've put in of Sulfaxin 500. So we know that physician has done that prescription. We will discharge that patient. I've already done that. That patient is going home, and I will say that that patient is going home now. And I will save that. You can see down here we have a print packet. I'm not going to show you that right now. We are just trying to finish that build. But every patient will have a print packet. It has any instructions. So if there was any instructions for appointments or that needed to be booked for future dates, for ultrasounds, and that would all be included. Anything that's included in here will be included in that packet. And we're deciding on what goes into that packet for ED. So what we would do is we would print it, and it includes the prescription as well for that patient. So yeah, that's great. The physician can print this just as well as the nurse can print the packet. Okay, so then we would save that. And
Amy, it's Caitlin. I just wanted to give you a time check.
yeah, I know. I just saw. I'm just trying to finish this one. Thank you.
Yeah.
So quickly, we can just see that that status event has flipped to discharge. That patient now has fallen off all the other trackers, but has not fallen off my list because that is my tracker to control. So if I had any further documentation I still wanted to do on that patient, then I could still do that. And then I would come down here and I would manually remove that patient from my list. Okay. Well, unfortunately, we didn't get to that patient that was being admitted. But I will say, if we do have some time on the next session after BMV, and we do have some ED folks still on the line, I will review that admitted patient process.